Look, all I'm saying is the next time you steal Post-its, they better not be the onion skin kind, okay? I'll peel you. Two, three, four. Ba da ba 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 ba. Ya da ba 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 ba. Dee 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 dee. Hi. I went to the comic book store today. Ba da ba da. It's for a change of pace. I thought I'd go a little Marvel heavy this week. First up, Avengers: Curse of the Man Thing #1. I don't know. Put Man Thing on the cover. I'll goddamn buy it. In fact, if I'm not very much mistaken, from what I was very briefly looking at online, this is the first in a couple three books that are going to be. There's going to be a Spider-Man Curse of the Man Thing and an X-Men Curse of the Man Thing. So this is essentially a Man Thing miniseries just done in a series of #1s because I'm forced to assume that they don't really make a big deal out of limited series or mini series anymore because people buy #1s. But that seems like a logic that would have made more sense in the 90s when I was a kid and there was still limited. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's true that comics are just completely behind the curve on everything. But I'm not only excited because the Man Thing is one of my favorite characters, but also because Steve Orlando is writing this issue. I don't know if he's writing. No, he is writing the others. And he's written a ton of stuff, but my favorite thing that I've read by him was the Midnighter series. Midnighter was a character. He's a DC character, but originally he was a Wildstorm character, which meant he was Now, all the Wildstorm universe, I believe, has been made canon into the DC universe. But the Midnighter was on the Authority, and he was, which was like a superhuman team, and he was an analog for Batman, and he's also a gay fellow, so he's dating Apollo, who is the Superman analog on the Authority. So that was one of the big things about the Authority was like, oh, Superman and Batman are dating, and it's actually it's even better than it sounds. They've not unlike Squadron Supreme from Marvel was a similar thing where it was like an analog for DC characters, and that all kind of went by the boards. It's still like very vaguely there. Anyway, if you ever get a chance to read Midnighter, I highly recommend it. His solo series, because also on top of all that, he's super bad, like way more badass than Batman ever could be. So it's another good reason to read it. Also up this week, Beta Ray Bill #1, another Marvel C-list character who was also a favorite of mine. This is written and drawn, I'm assuming, by Daniel Warren Johnson, whose art I really, really like, but looking him up, the only thing I've actually read by his was a Man Thing miniseries, oddly enough, from 2017. It might have started in 2016, written by children's author R.L. Stine. But wait, there's more. It also sucks really bad. It's honestly one of the worst comic books I've ever read in my life. I didn't grow up with R.L. Stine. It was a little after my time. Goosebumps came out, I think, when I was in high school. I mean, obviously, I'm no stranger to children's literature, but Goosebumps never really had an impact on me. There was a similar book I read in third grade called Tales of the Weird, but I don't think they ever made a series out of it. There was always stuff like that I remember. There was always kind of sci-fi and horror written for kids. Goosebumps just kind of really hit the ground running. It might have been the first to really break now that I'm thinking about it. And so I'm sure those books are good. It did not translate to the Man Thing. And he also did those things, or I don't even know if R.L. Stine is a lady or a dude, but it doesn't matter. It wasn't just that it was written very much for children, but like in a stupid way. Not like if I were a child, I would have been insulted. If he says, and it was also that he made the Man Thing talk, which is Jeff Parker did that briefly in Thunderbolts, but it was actually part of the story. Whereas with this, it's a similar thing to whenever a writer will write the Demon for DC and make it so that his dialogue no longer rhymes. It's like, okay, clearly you're just not a very good writer, that you don't know how to write a mute character. And if you can't write a mute character, Get the fuck out of the goddamn industry. I don't know where that anger came from. Oh, is it because I haven't dealt with a lot? It's because I haven't dealt with a lot of stuff. But seriously, fuck off with that shit. And then finally, Witchblood #1. This is again from the Vault Comics group, and I made the very common strategic error of telling the owner of my comic book shop that I will buy Marvel homage covers. This is, I don't know anything about this book. I was looking at it though on the list for this week. I was like, oh, I was kind of scratching my head, and I was like, I'm really trying not to to just keep buying every new indie book that comes out, even though a lot of them have been very good. But this was one that I was definitely on the fence about. And then when I got in there and I saw this Dazzler cover, I was like, well, I'm buying it. This is like I said, an homage to Dazzler #1, originally drawn by Bob Larkin from 1982, I want to say. Maybe a little bit earlier. Dazzler, not that it really matters, but Dazzler is a Marvel character that was really trying to capitalize on disco. But if I remember right, she didn't get her own book until disco had already been dead, so who knows. Anyway, how are you? Picks of the... Now we'll just go over picks of last week. Thank you very much. I have been really behind, but I have cleared my schedule for the day, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to read all 3 weeks worth of comics, but I did get at least this much read. First up, Vietnam Horror #1. Yeah, it's fine. I'm going to keep buying it. I really do like... Behemoth is an even smaller publisher than like Vault. And I'm going to continue to buy the series because I feel like it'll be worth it at the end, even if it's not kicking my ass right now. It also has, and I don't know how well that'll be conveyed via here, but it's really kind of cheaply put together, which I do not say critically. I think like it really kind of, the layout, like the paper's kind of coarse. It's not newsprint, but it's a little flimsy, and I mean, you still have to pay $4, but it has a very 80s black and white. It's in black and white. It has a very 80s indie vibe to it, and something about that just always kind of, you know, if I'd gotten an R.L. Stine at the same age, I might be whistling a different tune about that. So that, you know, I also read Harley Quinn #1. I could give a crap about this character at this point. I don't hate the character. I don't even remember if I finished my little rant last time, but this character, Harley Quinn, was introduced in Batman the Animated Series, the cartoon that was on in the 90s, and she was fine on that show, although I didn't see a point to her, because she was essentially just like a Joker's sidekick, but she was... And then obviously she became very, very popular. I remember, especially when I was working in a shop, women definitely and younger girls definitely were drawn to that character, which I certainly would encourage. I think more women should read comics, not just so I can hit on them, but, you know, because comics are good and everybody should like them. Having said all that, when it comes to the story, like there was a Future State series that immediately preceded this, which is referenced to a lot, and I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. I bought it for Riley Rossmo's art, and that was definitely worth it. I might get the rest of this. I'm not going to hurt myself trying to get it, though. Riley Rossmo has done a ton of stuff, but again, I looked him up, and I think the only things I read by him were he did a book called Dia de los Muertos for Image Comics, which, to be... Jeez, I don't even know if I own it. I feel like I read it, but I couldn't tell you a single thing about it, except that the art was really good. He did he did Cowboy Ninja Viking also, which I don't think I own. The main thing I know him from, though, was he drew, for a good couple years, there was a series that Marvel had called Daken, Dark Wolverine. Daken is Wolverine's son, and a pretty badass character unto himself. He was a villain, kind of rides that, you know, middle line. I think currently he's on X Factor, one of the X teams, and he's not. His alignment is a little more on the good side, but yeah, Rossmo's art on that was incredible. So I'll pretty much buy anything Rossmo draws. I just won't necessarily. I'll come for Rossmo. I might not necessarily stay for anything else. And then, also I read Alien #1. Whoo! I was talking to the Warren down at the shop about this because he asked me if I had had a chance to read this. I said, yeah, I loved it. And he went, oh, and I went, I don't even like those movies. So Yeah, it's really good. It takes place, I want to say, like further in the future from where Aliens took place. Uh, Lance Fredrickson's character in Aliens, who I'm pretty sure was a cyborg, he shows up in this. But other than that, they don't necessarily, which is kind of how I was figuring they might do it. One of the best things I like about Alien comics is that they don't generally tie back into the movies very much. Like, I'd rather just, the movies are fine. I don't hate them or anything. I'm just not a super fan. But yeah, this book was really good. Salvador La Roca art, it's really good. But the best thing I've, by hands down, that I read this week, hashtag Danger Volume 1, Panic on Dinosaur Mountain. This is one of the funnest and funniest books I've read this year so far. Tom Payer, I know the name from, but I don't know from where. Chris Giarrusso, though, that was really, I didn't even really realize it until I started reading him. Like, oh, that's why I wanted to read this. Chris Giarrusso is largely known for, or he's largely known to me for his children's books, and a lot of them are from Marvel. He did him and gosh, there's another guy, Chris Eliopoulos. They both have a similar cartoony style. And for a minute there, Marvel was running comic strips in the back of their books. So like you'd read the story, and then they'd have a mini Marvels page, and they'd be just these comic strips featuring Marvel characters, but like as children. And they were funny, and they were fun to read. And so I have a bunch of those. And then Giarrusso takes that style and applies it to this Challengers of the Unknown / Fantastic Four parody. And it is so good. So it's got all the action and adventure of those strips. It's also hilarious. There's a lot of casual swearing, which I always find very funny, especially with a cartoony style like this. I just can't recommend this enough. There's a couple, 3 stories that Giarrusso does not draw. Randy Elliott draws instead. And he's got a much different style, but it still works. And it's honestly, it's just really fun and funny. There's nothing else I can say. So I don't know if hashtag Danger has a second volume out. I don't think so. I think I've looked it up, but Ahoy Comics is really selling me lately. This one, Captain Ginger was the first one I read aside from Happy Hour, which is still good, but not as good as this. So I read Happy Hour, I'm enjoying it. I read Captain Ginger, I enjoyed it, but then I get to this and Bronze Age Boogie, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is the good stuff. So I've got one more Ahoy Comics trade, The Second Coming, which is like a superhero Jesus story. I'm always into the stuff like that. So into the stuff like that. So that was picked up last. I almost have finished that Garth Ennis String Bags. In fact, I almost brought it in here, but I haven't actually finished it yet, and I don't make up the rules. Who else makes them up if not me? So, all right, I'm going to go now because I'm going to do nothing but read comic books today. If you need me for something, don't! All right, bye. I keep forgetting to hold this up at the